today we have two amazing folks with us, Brandon Shindo and Kaelly Arellano of K&B Therapy. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad. So tell us about your business, which is K&B Therapy. It's group therapy and specializing in, what's it called? I blanked out.
That's okay.
It's all good.
Specializing in youth, athletes, and something else. And I can't think of it, so you guys will tell me about it.
So K&B Therapy Inc., we're actually located in Sherman Oaks, not too far away, we're the heart of the San Fernando Valley. We actually specialize in working with young professionals, college students, and people of color, really providing individual therapy, group therapy, and some other non-clinical services. But myself, my name is Brandon. I'm one of the co-founders, and
then I'm Kaelly. Is it my turn? Okay. Yeah. And I'm Kaelly Arellano, and I'm licensed clinical social worker and the other co-founder of K&B. So I'm the K to the K&B, and Brandon's the B to the K&B Therapy. But yeah, I think our private practice started more or less about a year ago. We just celebrated 1 year in private practice, which has been really exciting. A lot of adjustments. You can imagine we started our business in the middle of the pandemic, but we went for it, and it's been so rewarding to be able to provide support to so many folks during this time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I actually went to your homepage, and I think your philosophy is use your voice to create your vision.
That's
right?
You can always create your vision.
It's like close. I got it so close. But what's interesting is, in the middle of the pandemic and opening your own practice, what was that experience like? Did you have a lot of people approach you for your services, or did you have to kind of sort of find the people, or what was that experience like for both of you?
Yeah.
It was interesting because Kaelly and I had worked years together. We come from a background in community mental health, and so we would be out there serving our communities of need the best of our abilities. And during the pandemic, Kaelly and I really started to sit down and figure out, okay, what does the next chapter in life look like? What do we need to find this balance between success and happiness? And for us, it was like, okay, we want to practice what we preach. And so we want to really be and help individuals like ourselves, young professionals, people of color, first generation individuals. And so as we started this practice, the pandemic for us was a blessing in disguise, because before we were servicing only really LA County. But with the pandemic and everything shifting over to telehealth, it allowed Kaelly and I we have clients now in San Francisco, San Diego. So we're all throughout California.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And you just celebrated your first year. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Kaelly.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, to, your question, that, we did have people reach out, but I want to say that it was a mission in itself. I think Brandon and I, we're social workers. Unfortunately, in social, when we go get our degree, we don't learn about business. We really learn more about the clinical aspect of our work. And so to shift from doing the work for a company to creating our own company was definitely a learning curve for us. And that's where we really had to, start sharing a bit more about ourselves. We started to, we created social media pages, and we found a lot of people reach out to us that way as they started to get to know each of us individually, but also as, business partners. And so it's been really neat, during this time. And like Brandon mentioned, we have people all across California, which is really great because it's now expanded the access to us.
That's pretty awesome, guys. I'm psyched. I actually have my BA in psychology, but I just kind of didn't, go through social work and all that. I felt it wasn't sort of my field. So, it's not for everyone. And, kudos to both of you for doing what you do, because it takes a lot to be a therapist. I mean, just the emotional aspect, just having to battle not projecting your own feelings and emotions to the people that you're trying to help out. That's kudos, man. That's a lot. Speaking of which, how do you guys navigate that? Like, you know, that aspect of therapy, like not having to separate you from your clients. How, what techniques do you guys use to navigate that? Kaelly.
Okay. I think that it takes practice, but I think beyond that, for me, it's always remembering that I'm here to support the client, and I think that that's where being able to have your own space as a therapist, to be able to process things that come up for you individually, but being, while you're in that therapy session, to really be able to give your undivided attention and focus and energy to them. I think that when it comes to just even like if we can consider just the pandemic, this has been a really interesting time to be a therapist because, prior to this, perhaps our clients are talking to us about things that maybe we've experienced, but not at the same time, like not at the exact same time. So that's been very different. And I'll say, I think that's been probably the hardest for me to separate, I think, in the beginning of the pandemic, because so many of my clients were coming to us for, anxiety about what is life looking like, or feeling very depressed about just like, what is their purpose in life, and loss and all sorts of things. And so it's the first time that it's like, oh, wow, like you're nervous, I'm nervous too, and how do I support that? Right. So I would say just like remembering like what we're there for, and then being able to find space for yourself afterwards, or checking in with yourself about like, ooh, that was really heavy for me, and how can I support me too.
Nice. Brandon?
Yeah, I think that, as Kaelly said, that, we're trained to be clinicians, but never trained to be clinicians during a pandemic. And I think that it really took Kaelly and I to really rethink a lot of things and to go back to our core values and our morals of like, okay, how are we going to make this business work, as well as, hold a safe place for our clients. And, as Kaelly and I always talk about, we have to practice what we preach. And so, therapists go to therapy. And so having your own safe place, but also outside of therapy, having, Kaelly is not only my colleague and fellow co-founder, but she's also one of my best friends. And so having somebody there that I know I can go and talk to and process things, laugh with Kaelly about things, and knowing that she has my back and vice versa, it's made this business work in such a way that our own feelings and thoughts aren't spilling over onto our clients.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And, I mean, I've heard best friends having like businesses together and having to navigate through that extra layer of like, all right, we have to do business, but we're friends. So where do we draw the line, et cetera? Do you find that you have to navigate through that as well? Or is that something that's just, it's just natural for you guys to work together?
I think my opinion is that it's pretty natural. I think prior to, doing business together, we were working both as supervisors at a different company. And so we collaborated a lot. But I think that having a friendship is really what allowed us to really respect one another and to have like real talk, like when things are not working out, to be able to say like, hey, this is what's going on, or just to work through things, or to be able to say, I have no idea what we're doing, and vice versa, and I think that that's what makes it work for us. I could imagine that for others, that could be tough, but I think that for Brandon and I, there's just so much respect on a professional level, but also just as friends and colleagues, like it works.
Yeah, I think that this level of, I call Kaelly my sister, because we'll have hard conversations. And they are very uncandid, and like the truth comes out, but we're both be able to take that truth and recognize, okay, this is what we're working with here, whether it's I need to change it and do something differently, or Kaelly, or whatever it is. And that openness has allowed us to grow our business and for it to thrive, which has been great.
Do you feel that it's your relationship as friends that makes the business or makes your clients, or how's that dynamic with your clients? Knowing that you guys are really good friends, and that does that friendship spill over and that openness to the clients as well spill over? Do you feel that that's something that benefits you guys as a business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, our friendship is what, we created this practice, right? But I think at the core of it all is our values. And I think that when we talked about establishing a business together, I think the only reason why we probably were able to do it together, because there's plenty of social workers and therapists and people out there that we were great colleagues with, but I think it was our values as individuals, right? Our upbringing's different, but also so similar in many ways. I think that that's our core foundation. And I definitely think that that translates to the way that we navigate clients. I think Brandon often says, we treat people as people. Like, that's his thing. He always says that. And I think that that's just because that's how we are as individuals. I think therapists, for people who've never been to therapy, it can sound scary, right? It's kind of like when you go to the doctors, it's like, they're wearing their white coats, but our hope is that it can be, comfortable, that we are just people trying to support others, and treating people like people. And I think that while our values are so similar, I think our approaches are different, just like our personalities are different, but I think that that's what works. I also think that our specialties, it does fall under this big umbrella, but I'm a Latina and I'm very proud of it. And so for me, I see a lot of Latinx folks, and it's really, really special in that way. And for me to be able to use, Spanglish and connect with my clients in that way. I mean, I think similarities for the both of us is that, we will be serious with our clients when necessary, but we're not above like joking around with them, celebrating with them, and so that definitely translates. That playfulness definitely translates.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That relatability piece is key. And I think something that we really pride ourselves on, that, Kaelly and I had gone through all this formalized training on what it means to be a therapist and everything. And we recognize that for, the next generation, millennials, and generations below that, like, the definition of therapist is changing, and particularly with social media and whatnot. And so Kaelly, while she has her specializations, I have mine. I really specialize in working with Asian Americans. And so recognizing, okay, we take the cultural aspects of it, and Kaelly and I talk about the similarities and the differences, but then we ultimately say, okay, how are we going to make our service relatable to people and so that they feel comfortable? And so, coming in with a suit and tie is not our style. And so like I have tattoos and my ear pierce, all these things, but that's who I am. And Kaelly has her own style. And the clients will gravitate to either one of us that they feel more aligned with, kind of their style and what they feel comfortable with. And I think having that balance is nice, because sometimes they're more of a fit for Kaelly and sometimes they're more of a fit for me, which has been great.
Speaking of mental health and all that, I think over the past just couple of years, just the perception of what mental health is, and with all, the athletes coming out with Naomi Osaka, for example, Simone Biles and all that, but mental health the perception of it has evolved. And it feels like you guys have been in the industry for such a long time. What, I guess the question would be, how has it affected your practice, or how has that evolution of that perception changed the way you built your practice?
I think that the stigma between, both the communities Kaelly and I come from is deep rooted there in terms of receiving mental health services. But I think it's important to acknowledge that a lot of times mental health is often used interchangeably for mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we try to do is to recognize, and Kaelly, we were just having this conversation earlier about how like mental health is health. And so at the end of the day, we all have it. I think that the way Kaelly and I go about presenting this to individuals, it's changing over time. When we were first starting in the field, talking about mental health was very serious. It was a very serious manner. Mm-hmm. And now with things such as social media, like TikTok and things like that, Kaelly's so creative and is really like has an eye for entertainment, like kind of creativity. I'm more boring and more like logistics. So she's able to like, okay, how can we put a spin on this to make it entertaining, but also very informative, so people want to come seek mental health services.
I think there's been a shift as far as just like even the transparency from therapists to the community themselves. I think obviously within its limits, of course, but I think that just the willingness, I think, for so many mental health professionals themselves to share, hey, I've struggled with this too, and here I am supporting you, like, and it's okay, I think that that's definitely shifted, and I think prioritizing mental health has definitely been, I don't know, I think, when we think about our communities, when it comes to mental health, sometimes it's considered selfish, or if we think about just like culture and what we're taught, keep family secrets within family, and don't go talking and spreading your business and all this stuff. I think that has created barriers for so long, but I think to be able to shift the narrative of what mental health truly is and how getting support for yourself can support your community as well, I think that's definitely changed. But for Brandon and I, we definitely keep in consideration culture and other systemic situations that are going on, and how when we think about like racism or politics, like those are things that definitely impact people's mental health. And so that's not off, that's not off limits within therapy. I think we embrace it and we explore it and we talk about it.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, no, I think you guys have double the work, especially during this pandemic and this day and age with the shift of like so many things. I mean, just a shift in how politics is, how all, just as you said, Kaelly, just everything is just a lot, and navigating through that as an individual without support, or having to deal with the cultural background and all that. It's just, that's a lot of stuff, guys. So with that, how do you, for example, someone who needs therapy for their mental health and, just their well-being, how do you promote that in, in a culture or in a society that kind of frowns upon it, like, oh, therapy, like someone sitting on a couch, like you sit on the couch and someone's just taking notes and like, you're like, I'm just sitting on this couch and you're already judging me. How do you guys combat that archaic image of what therapy is?
I think that growing up, I grew up in a household where mental health wasn't talked about, and the option to go to therapy, like that was never put on the table until much later on in my life. And I think that one of the conversations that really stuck with me was hearing somebody provide education about what mental health services are and what is mental health. Because I think that through education, we can break through a lot of barriers and start to plant some seeds. Now, Kaelly and I's job is never to, go in with a mission that we're going to change everybody's minds and everybody's going to be going to therapy. That's up to them to kind of make that decision. But we provide them the foundation in terms of, this is what anxiety may look like. This is what our cultures may perceive, like, oh, when they say like we have a headache or like our stomach hurts when we get nervous, that could be anxiety and things like that. And then people will ultimately start to like put two and two together, and they're going to make that decision. Okay, maybe I want to go seek help because Brandon or Kaelly look like me, or they understand like my culture that I'm coming from. And so they're a little bit more open.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, besides doing therapy services, it's like Brandon and I really, when there are opportunities for us to be, keynote speakers or present on mental health, we do so, because as Brandon mentioned, knowledge, is power, and knowledge can also, break down these walls. And I think that even within those presentations, that's where we utilize our story, or we talk about what are common sayings that we hear within our community about mental health, because if you've heard them, then this might be a barrier for you too, and let's talk about it. So I think it's just like, providing information, I think, is a different way for us to just like break down those barriers also.
That's awesome. Right, switching gears really quickly. Why did your business target or focus on young professionals and athletes, I think, or not, athletes, and well, people of color, that's sort of like self-explanatory, but why young professionals and why athletes? Why that particular population?
Yeah, so the reason why we focus on young professionals is because, you know, we're very transparent. By the time that we were done with our previous company, we were completely burnt out, and we were tired, we were exhausted. And so we had a lot of conversations about, you know, there are so many young professionals out there that are doing well, all things considered, you know, that we're going to our job, we're getting promoted, you know, we're checking off these boxes that society or ourselves, we placed like these pressures upon ourselves, like we have to check these boxes. But what happens is that, you know, because we are also people, we started to think, you know, wow, you know, we've gone to school, we got our master's degree, we then, you know, got our license, like we're doing everything quote unquote right. But at the end of the day, it's like if we're still exhausted, or if we're not really finding that balance between success and happiness, then what is this that we're chasing, right? And so the reason why we decided to do young professionals is because you can be someone who's doing well at work, doing well with your family, and still need that support, you know, because therapy isn't just about intervening when things are hot mess express. You know, like therapy can also be, you know, a form of preventative care. It can also be, you know, I know I'm going to go into this life transition, and so how can I build my tools here so that I have a safe space to process should, you know, things hit the fan, like I have my space. And so that's really why we just felt like, you know, it was something that maybe we wanted for ourselves, and if we felt like we couldn't find it, we wanted to create it.
Very nice. I like that, hot mess express.
Yeah.
That's funny. I'm sorry, Brandon, you were going to say something.
No, I think that, like, you know, as Kaelly had mentioned, that young professionals we try to be the individual who we needed when we were, you know, growing up in the field. You know, we were burnt out at the end of our stint in community mental health. It was just a lot of things that were put on us and whatnot. And so we try to help other individuals. How do we, you know, heal from burnout? How else do we prevent it? But we also go back a little bit further. And so while we're working with young professionals, our other area of specialty is working with college students. So really thinking about, okay, you're in this realm of college, maybe you're the first one to go, and there's these pressures of like, you know, you're seen as like the smart one in the family. You're seen as like the savior that's going to take us from, you know, one social economic status to the next. But a lot of times you become like a holder of all secrets, a holder of all the pressure, and it begins to weigh down very hard. And so we provide them the language, the tools, so that when they become a young professional, they will be able to maintain their balance between success and happiness. So they'll be able to make that money, but they'll also be able to say, hey, I'm going to set a boundary right there, and I'm going to spend some time so I can do self-care and take care of myself.
Mhm.
Wow, I was actually just talking to someone about self-care and boundaries. It seems like that's not, I mean, I was going to say that's all the rage, but that's really that's not the verbiage. I apologize. But I mean, it's just, it seems like as young professionals, or as I have a sister, you know, 3 sisters that are younger than I am. And it seems that the youngest, that's what what she prioritizes is like boundaries and self-care and just self-healing and just making sure that she's okay first before, which is, you know, it has its own merits. So, you know, that's awesome. That's a good approach. What you, ugh, I can't speak today. I apologize. What makes your practice unique versus someone else's practice that handles the same clientele that you do?
That's a really good question. I'm gonna have to think about that one. What makes us stand out? I think, and Kaelly, feel free to chime in, but I think that Kaelly and I have always, part of the reason like we've always clicked was this level of never thinking we're better than. And so that's why I always say we treat people like people. So when people come into our office as clinician and client, we have a certain type of professional relationship, but there's this added flavor that we put that, you know, we're no better than. And so we always like to tell people, we don't work for you, we work with you.
Mhm.
And so that dynamic alone is a huge shift, because we'll have clients come to us and, we'll crack jokes and stuff. And they're like, oh, well, we thought therapy was going to be like super formal and, we couldn't laugh or we couldn't crack jokes and things like that. We want people to feel as if they're coming into our home or we're going into theirs. And we're just two human beings helping one another. There's no, forget about the titles, forget about all that kind of stuff. We're just two people trying to help them become the better version of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even to go back to like what we were talking about earlier, it's like, I think it's not to say that other therapists do not, address these things, but I think for Brandon and myself, we really want to support our communities. And so we acknowledge and embrace, just all of, like the culture, that really does play a role, even going back to like boundaries, I think that, I often joke, like, what is setting boundaries with a Latina mom? Like, okay, good luck, but I think for us to be able to acknowledge that, and like Brandon said, crack jokes, but then also be able to go back to it, like, okay, we get it, this, culture says this, right? And so how do we acknowledge culture while also figuring out that balance for you on, you're trying to set boundaries because this is how it's impacting your mental health, but this is also going to be the pushback you're going to receive. How can we navigate that pushback? So, I think that something that just, I think makes us special is just that we really address all of these components that impact mental health. We're not just talking about what is anxiety and what is depression and, creating tools. We're really embracing the whole person and the environment that the person comes, where the person comes from.
Very nice. In the year that you guys done your business, what's been the three things or three, not issues, but three challenges that people have come to you guys for? Top three.
Anxiety. I think this last year, 2 years has been the years of unknowns and uncertainties. And I often say that anxiety's bestie is uncertainty. And so anxieties have been very, very high. There's so much adapting, I think for people who are parents, it's like adjusting to their children being at home. What do I do with this? I think adjusting for college students to doing school virtually and not having that social component. For young professionals who are just got a new job, how do you adapt and make colleagues and coworkers and friends, and adjust to that. I think grief, there's been a lot of grief for people. And grief, not just in the form of, physical loss, right? Like, like death, which is very true for so many people, but just grief of what life once was like. Grief about, what we thought life would look like at this point. And I think all those things really combined and, presenting themselves as anxiety, that's one really big one that I think. What about you, Brandon? What do you think in addition to that?
I think that, working through people's traumas has been another one that has arisen, because the pandemic has served as a trigger to bring up a lot of things that maybe people had brushed under the rug for a long time. And now you go into quarantine and all you have is time. You have time and time by yourself for a lot of individuals. So it's a lot of time of reflection about, kind of tying in the anxiety and the grief, but also arising, like, how do we process through these traumas that we brushed under the rug by being so busy? Kaelly and I will often talk about how the pandemic was almost like somebody pulling an emergency brake. And all of a sudden we were going 100 miles per hour and all of a sudden we're expected to stop. Well, all that stuff that was like in the back of the car is now coming flying forward. And so our job now is to sit there in the passenger seat with the driver and be like, okay, let's kind of sort through these things. And how is it impacting you? And how can we unload some of these things so that they don't come up again?
Nice, nice. How have you guys dealt with the pandemic? I know, I'm like switching it. I was like, how have you guys dealt with all this? Because it's enough, like, again, normal people dealing with it, but being put in a position where you're helping others, but also dealing with what you're internalizing. Like how has that experience been for both of you?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I think it has ebbed and flowed for me personally. I think in the beginning, it was really hard. There was so much adapting. We had chosen to leave our job, and start something new. So it's like, in addition to just the pandemic itself, we were starting a business. And so there were so many unknowns with that. But I think there was also for me a lot of worry about my family. I'm very, very close to my family. And so I was really worried about, like, are they going to be okay? When am I going to see them? So really adapting to like a different way of communicating or not seeing my family as much was really, really tough. And then I think when like things were flowing, I would say that I had to kind of stop and think about the things that we teach our clients, and do it myself, like checking in with myself, taking those breaks, talking things through if I needed to. So it's ebbed and flowed, I also, this is my corner, welcome to my corner. And, this is my home, my work, and all things, here, and so that has also been kind of tough, but also just such a blessing. I think it just depends on how I look at it that day. Some days I look at it as like, how blessed am I that I get to work from home, that I get to do what I love, that I get to be here with my puppy. I'm so blessed. And then there's other days where I'm like, I'm so tired of being here. I want to get out of this house. Like, you know what I mean? So I think it's just very much so ebbed and flowed. And it's just required a lot of checking in with myself on what do I need. So that's how it's been for me.
Yeah, for me, I think similar to Kaelly, it's ebbed and flowed as well. I mean, it's been hard. I mean, Kaelly and I come from a field where we were used to being around people, for 12, 14 hours a day at some capacity. And we would provide actually field services back in the day. So we would actually go into other people's home. And so we were always moving to all of a sudden, being in one place all day long. And that blurred boundary between work and home became very blurred, a very much so a gray area. I think that for me, the hardest part was the disruption in routine. I'm somebody who loves routine, and I was so used to it. And this new normal required me to really figure out, okay, what is my new routine? And so Kaelly and I had a lot of conversations of like, okay, we're going to get, even if we get lunch one day a week, like that will get us out of the house and we'll be able to talk business and do these things. It's just been a big adjustment. But similar to Kaelly, like the chronic worry about family, safety, and whatnot has been something that has weighed heavy. But I think once again, using your support systems, practicing what you preach, has led us to a place that I think we found our groove, but it requires a lot of recalibration. We have to check in, sometimes multiple times in a day just to make sure that we are in the right headspace. But we're getting it done.
Good. All right. As we're going to be wrapping up this interview, are there any last thoughts or any advice that you can give someone or therapist that would want to start their own business as well? Or just any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
I mean, I have two thoughts, right? I have thoughts for like people who are potentially considering mental health, and then I have thoughts for therapists who are considering going into business and doing their own private practice. So for people who have been considering mental health or like getting mental health services and have never done it, I think if you're considering it, tap into that, lean into that. It really, sometimes the scariest things give us the most reward, and so there's so much power into you knowing and so if you're considering it, reach out. Consultations, are free. Many clinicians, we do provide, 15 to 20-minute consultations just to see if you even like it. Like, can we help you? Do you want to start off, so take that leap. And then for those who are therapists and are considering, going into business, what I have to say, it's possible. It is all possible. I think that if you would have asked me 2 years ago, would you ever be doing private practice today? I would have been like, yeah, right. But I think it's just, why not today? Like, if you're considering it, why not today? That's my thought. Go for it.
I think that, kind of piggybacking off of Kaylee, that this piece of if you're looking for mental health services or you're pondering with the idea, to really embrace this concept that change requires change. And so if something is not working for you, or you feel like, you want to do preventative work, whatever it is, that means we have to change some things up. And what better place to do it in than in the safety of a therapeutic session, where for that 50 minutes, the world is all about you. And that's something really rare because we live in a world where it's always about somebody else at some capacity. But to sit with your therapist and to recognize that there's no judgment, that you're in a place that it's all about you, you really going to run your session. That's something really special. And I think that on the flip side, for those individuals who are already therapists and they're like, I want to get this done, but I don't know how. Kaelly and I always talk about, like, there is no competition for us. We want them to win too. And so we help as much as we can. We help clinicians who are trying to build their own practice, because just as with us, like, we didn't do this alone. We did this help with our loved ones. We did it with mentors. All these people have helped us along in this journey. And so it's our way of helping, somebody else who would like to get here.
Awesome. So if somebody else wants to find help and you guys, where can they find you?
Sure. Well, we have a website. Our website is www.btherapy.com. And then you can also find us on pretty much all social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. So we have like our business one, which is K&B Therapy. That would be our handle. And then we each have our own personal. Well, it's our business personal one, I guess. And for me, it would be at Kaelly Talks Therapy. My name is Kaelly Talks Therapy. And then Brandon, yours is BA Shindo.
Yeah, bashindo.lcsw. It's not as aesthetically pleasing as Kaylee's. Mine's like more to the point, but yeah, feel free to follow us.
Awesome. Brandon, Kaelly, thank you so much for being on the show and for imparting your wisdom. It was amazing having you guys here and just sharing your experience and your business.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.